Hi class, in this video we're going to take a look at how we solve multi-step equations when we have multiple variables in play. So the first two what we're going to do is we also need to understand that we can solve any equation for any variable. So the first two we're going to look at is we're going to solve each of these equations for y, and then we're going to look at two others and how we would solve those for x. So let's get started here. So if we remember the process we need to use when we solve multi-step equations is we always want to add or subtract first and then multiply or divide. So the idea here is we want to get y alone, meaning we need to remove this from this side and send it to the right. So in order to do that, remember we always have to do the opposite. Okay, so the opposite of positive 2x is subtracting 2x. Now, when we do that on the left, we've taken it and moved it, meaning it's gone, and we sent it to the right. Now, when we look at the right, though, we have to remember that we see a 6 minus 2x. And that does not equal 4x because these two terms are not like terms. These are unlike terms. So the only thing we need to do is simply rewrite the right side of the equation. We know that we've got 3y on the left is going to equal negative 2x plus 6. So again, we're adding or subtracting first and then multiplying or dividing. So if we look at the left side and we need to solve for y, we have to get rid of the 3. And since it's 3 times y, we are going to divide both sides by 3. And I'm going to rewrite the right side so we can see this two ways, okay? So the first is similar to how it looks up there. What this means, though, is that we've got y equals negative 2x divided by 3 plus 6 divided by 3. So that 3, when we divided that 3 to both sides, we have to make sure that it gets to each term on the right side of the equation. So what we see right here is the same thing as this down here, okay? Well, the nice thing now is I look at this and I don't have to do much simplifying, right? I've got y already. The only thing I need to simplify is this right here. Because remember, this we can leave as a fraction. We don't need to do anything different with that. So I'm going to simply rewrite this like that. And I know that 6 over 3, or 6 divided by 3, is 2. And now I am done. So even though we had two variables on the left side to start, we can solve for either one of them by following that same process of adding or subtracting and then multiplying or dividing. So in this case, we were solving for y. So y equals negative 2/3 x plus 2, okay? All right, so if we go now and take a look at this one right here, we're going to do the same thing, okay? Same thing. The only thing we have to be careful of is this subtraction sign that's there in front of them. We're not going to get there yet, but we're going to follow that same process of dealing with and moving this first. I need to move this over here, and I do that by subtracting, which is the opposite of 4x. So the opposite of 4x is minus 4x or negative 4x, okay? And again, so whatever I do to one side, I need to make balance or create balance and do it to the other side as well, okay? So just like example 1, if I look at I'll rewrite my left side, and I'm going to come back to that too. I cannot combine these two terms on the right side. This does not make negative 9x. These are unlike terms. So the only thing I have to do, again, which is kind of nice, is just rewrite it as negative 4x minus 5. Now at the start of this, I put this box around our y, and especially the negative sign, because that travels with us down here. We have to be very careful with signs, okay? This is a negative 5y, right? If I change this to adding the opposite, it would be plus negative, okay? So the only difference now between what we did in the first question, this one, is we're still going to divide both sides, but in this case now we need to divide both sides by negative 5, okay? And so we can see this again. This right here, this is equal to negative 4 over negative 5x minus negative 5 divided by negative 5. Okay, so we've got a little cleaning up to do with this one, meaning we got to fix some things here, because if we need everything in simplified form, well, I've got a negative divided by a negative. I can leave it as a fraction, but it has to be a reduced simplified fraction. So a reduced simplified fraction in this case would look like this, because a negative divided by a negative is a positive. So negative 4 over negative 5 is the same thing as 4/5. And we're going to write it like a positive. So that is positive. Now we go over here, and similar, we've got it's minus 5 divided by negative 5. So again, I've got a negative divided by a negative. Well, negative 5 over negative 5 is the same thing as 1. So my final answer for this one, if we're solving for y, is going to be 4/5 x plus 1. So we looked at the first two and we solved for y, and I said we can solve for any term or any variable we want. Okay, so the first two we solved for y. Now we're going to go down here and take a look and do the same thing, but this time we're going to solve for x, which means I need to take this and ship it to this side. So we do that by adding 4y and adding 4y, okay? So on the left side of the equation, we've moved that y to the other side, and we're just left with 3x equals, and again, so just like the first two, we cannot combine these two. This does not make 8y. These are not like terms. There's no y attached to that 4 right here. That is not the same as this right here. So we're just going to rewrite. So 4y plus 4. Step 1, add or subtract. Step 2, multiply or divide, right? So I've got 3 times x, so I need to divide because that's the opposite of multiplication, okay? So now, whatever I do to the left, I have to do to the right, okay? So I'm left with x equals 4 over 3y plus 4 over 3. And I just need to make sure, take one look and say, are my fractions simplified and reduced as far as they can go? And in this case, they are. So I actually don't have to do anything else. And if we were solving for x, our answer would be x equals 4/3 y plus 4/3. Last one, same process. We're solving for this, so we need to move this. So the opposite of positive 5y is minus 5y and minus 5y. Balance. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other, okay? So on the left side, my 5y is gone. On the right side, again, I cannot combine those to make negative 30y, but what I can do is rewrite it so that it's 3 times x equals negative 5y minus 25. Again, we have to pay close attention to our signs. Those travel with us. We can't just change it from a negative to a positive or a positive to negative. It has to stay the same. Step 1 was add or subtract. Step 2 is multiply or divide. Since this is multiplication, the opposite of multiplication again is division. So we divide both sides by 3. So when I do that on the left, I'm left with 1x equals negative 5 third y minus 25 over 3, or 25 thirds. So again, my last step is just to make sure that none of these fractions can be reduced. I can leave them as improper as long as they're simplified as far as they can go. And if I look at that, those two right there are as simplified as they could possibly go. So that means my final answer is x equals negative 5 thirds y minus 25 thirds. So this showed you right here a couple examples. The first two we solved for y, the second two we solved for x, but even if we added a third variable, let's say there was a z in there, we could do the same process and still solve for z. So when we think about solving multi-step equations with multiple variables, the process is the same as if there was only a single variable. So we still add or subtract, and then we multiply or divide, okay? Same process, we don't do anything different. So hopefully this was helpful, and we will catch you on our next video.